The sky was on fire. Ash fell like snow as the ground shook beneath Captain Mason's boots. Human warships roared above, while broken metal and alien bodies lay scattered across the valley below. This wasn't just a battlefield anymore, it was a graveyard. The final war between humans and the Zalari Empire had come to this. One last strike. One final breath. Mason moved through the smoke, weapon ready. His armor was dented, blood on his gloves. Some human, some alien. He had fought for years, seen friends die beside him. He was tired, angry, but most of all, he was alone. Then he heard it. A soft sound. Not gunfire. Not machinery. A whisper. A breath. He turned quickly, aiming his rifle toward the ruined rocks ahead. And there she was. A Zalari warrior. Female. Her black armor was broken. One arm bleeding heavily. Face marked by burns and dust. But her eyes were still sharp. She should have attacked. She didn't. Instead, she dropped her blade, fell to her knees and looked up. "Don't kill me, human," she whispered, voice shaking. "I'll warm your bed." Mason blinked, stunned. This was the same species that crushed cities? That tore human colonies apart? Proud Zalari, begging? He didn't lower his gun. She knelt lower, her hands trembling on the dirt. Not fake fear, real fear. The kind no warrior should feel. "Please," she said. I know what your kind does to prisoners." He stepped closer, still watching her carefully. "What are you talking about? They say humans don't take prisoners. That you use us, then throw us away." Mason's voice was calm, but his eyes narrowed. "Is that what they told you?" She nodded, barely. He saw her up close now. Her breathing was heavy. Her shoulders were shaking. This wasn't some trick. She was hurt, exhausted, alone. Something inside him shifted. He lowered the gun. "I don't kill those who surrender," he said quietly. The Zalari's eyes widened, not with relief, but confusion. She looked at him like he was the strange one. He pulled a water pouch from his belt and tossed it toward her. She flinched, but then slowly she took it. Her hands were shaking as she drank. Fast, desperate, like she hadn't tasted water in days. "I'm Mason," he said. "Captain, Earth Forces." She looked up from the pouch. "You shouldn't tell me your name." "Why not?" "It means you're not afraid of me." He shrugged. "I'm not." She stared at him for a long time, then finally said, "Sayla." My name, Sayla." He gave a small nod. "Nice to meet you, Sayla." She almost smiled. Almost. But then her eyes turned cold again. "If your people find me, they'll shoot me. If mine find me, they'll call me a traitor." "You saved yourself," Mason said. "That's not betrayal. That's survival." She didn't answer. She just looked down, the weight of her choices pressing into her like the ruined world around them. Mason reached into his bag and pulled out a thermal blanket. He tossed it beside her. "What are you doing?" she asked. "You'll freeze by morning." "I don't understand you," she whispered. "You're supposed to hate me." "I don't have the energy to hate anyone anymore." She didn't know what to say. No one had shown her mercy before. Not her commanders. Not her enemies. Not even her own people. But this human, he was different. As she wrapped the blanket around herself, she felt something strange. A feeling she didn't recognize. Warmth. Not just from the blanket, but from his eyes. From his words. From his choice to let her live. That night, under the burning sky, Sayla didn't sleep. She watched Mason rest near the fire. Her blade was still close by. She could kill him, escape, but she didn't. She just watched him, the man who gave her water, warmth, and a second chance. And deep in her heart, something dangerous began to grow. Doubt. What if the humans weren't the monsters? What if she had been one all along? The war was over, or so they said. Captain Mason walked beside the alien warrior, Sayla, through the cold desert. Her hands were tied. Her head was low. But she wasn't afraid. Not anymore. She had met one human who did not act like the others. One human who gave her mercy instead of death. Still, she was a prisoner now, and prisoners wore chains. When they reached the Earth Forces outpost, all eyes turned to Sayla. Soldiers raised weapons. Some shouted. Some cursed. A Zalari! What is she doing here? She's dangerous. She'll kill us in our sleep. But Mason stood in front of her. She surrendered, he said. She's under my protection. The officers were angry. They didn't trust her. She had killed humans before, many. She had blood on her hands. But Mason was respected. And he had saved lives before. So they allowed it. Sayla was locked inside a steel cell. No windows. Just a bed, a light, and silence. She sat there for hours. No one came. No one spoke to her. Until Mason returned. He didn't wear armor this time. Just a plain jacket. And 2 steaming cups of something warm. Food, he said, handing 1 cup through the bars. Well, kind of. She sniffed it. It smells strange. It's coffee. She drank it slowly. Bitter, but warm. Why are you being kind to me? She asked. Mason leaned on the wall. You didn't kill me when you had the chance. Sayla looked down. I wanted to. I know, he said with a smile. She looked at him carefully. Do all humans smile at their enemies? Only the confused ones. That made her laugh. Just a little. The sound surprised even her. Scene change, nighttime. Camera pans across the outpost. Days passed. Sayla remained a prisoner. But she wasn't treated like an animal. Mason checked on her every morning. He brought her food. He asked her questions. And slowly, she answered them. What's your world like? He asked. Cold, she said. Rocky. Always training. Always war. No art. Art is weakness. No music. She paused. There was a song, she said softly. My mother used to hum it before battle. Mason leaned closer. Can you sing it? No, she said quickly. It's forbidden. Why? Because it made us feel. He didn't push her. But she noticed, he never laughed at her answers. He just listened. No one had ever done that before. Scene change. Flashback in her mind. Blades clashing. Zalari training grounds. Soldiers shouting. Sayla remembered her training. As a child, she held a blade before she could speak. She was taught to stab first. Think later. Emotions were a disease. And humans? They were targets. She had believed all of it. Until now. Now she wasn't sure. Scene change, back to cell. One evening there was a power cut. Lights flickered. The base went dark. From her cell, Sayla heard shouting. Then silence. Moments later, her door opened. 2 human guards entered, drunk, angry, wild. You think she's just a guest here? One sneered. She's a killer. Let's remind her who's in charge. They grabbed her arms. Sayla growled, tried to fight, but her chains held her back. Then a voice shouted, Let her go, Mason. He stormed into the room, eyes blazing. Touch her again and I'll have you both locked up. The guards backed off, grumbling. Sayla sat in the corner, breathing fast. Mason kneeled beside her. You okay? She didn't answer, but her eyes were wet, not with pain, with something deeper, confusion. Why had he stopped them? Why did he keep protecting her? I'm not worth saving, she said. You are, he replied. Why? He smiled sadly. Because you still ask questions. Scene change, days later. The officers met in secret. She's dangerous. She's changing. She's starting to think like us. Mason heard everything. But he didn't care. Because he saw something in Sayla that no one else did. A spark. A beginning. She wasn't just a warrior anymore. She was becoming something more. Something human. Final scene cell. Late at night. Sayla sat by the wall holding a small photo Mason had given her. A picture of Earth. Trees. Oceans. Children laughing. A world without war. A world she never knew could exist. She touched the picture gently. For the first time in her life, she wanted to see that world. Not as a spy. Not as a weapon. But as someone free. She looked out through the cell bars toward the stars and whispered one word. The war was over. But for Sayla, something else had just begun. She no longer felt like a soldier. Not fully. She was still in a prison cell, but it felt different now. Captain Mason visited every day, not as a guard, but as something else. A guide, a friend, maybe even something more. Scene. Mason enters with a small box. "Good morning," Mason said with a soft smile. Sayla raised an eyebrow. "What is that?" "It's music." "Music?" she asked. "Is that the sound humans make when they're not fighting?" Mason laughed. "Sometimes, yeah." He pressed a button. Soft, gentle music filled the room. Slow piano notes, a quiet voice singing in English. Sayla froze. She had never heard anything like it. The melody touched something inside her. Something she didn't know was there. It wasn't pain. It wasn't fear. It was calm. "What is this feeling?" she asked. "It's called peace," Mason said. Scene change outside the cell. Small open courtyard. Mason convinced the officers to let Sayla out for 1 hour a day, under his watch. They thought he was crazy, but he didn't care. Sayla stood in the sunlight, eyes closed, head tilted up. "The sun feels soft," she whispered. "You've never stood in sunlight before? Not without armor. Not without orders." Mason handed her a small plant in a pot. "What is this for?" she asked. "Something to take care of. Helps the mind. Humans call it therapy." Sayla touched the leaves carefully. "Life in a cup. Strange. But beautiful," Mason replied. Scene change evening. Inside the outpost cafeteria, Sayla sat at a corner table. Some soldiers stared at her. Some whispered. She didn't care. Mason brought her a bowl of soup. She stared at it. "What is this made of?" "Vegetables," he smiled. "And hope." She took a bite. Her eyes widened. "This is good." "Yeah," Mason nodded. "Not everything about humans is war and noise." Sayla looked around the room. People were laughing, talking, sharing food. No orders, no weapons, just living. She leaned closer and asked quietly, "Do your people always live like this?" "When we're lucky." Scene change. Later that night, back in her cell, Sayla sat in silence, staring at the small plant Mason had given her. She touched its soft leaves again and again. Her fingers, once used to hold blades, now held life. A knock came at the door. It was Mason. "You didn't sleep?" he asked. She shook her head. "I don't know how." "You mean you can't?" "No," she said. "I mean, I was trained never to relax, never to dream. It was weakness." Mason sat down beside the door. "Dreaming isn't weakness, Sayla. It's the beginning of strength." She was quiet for a long time. Then she asked something she never thought she would. "Do humans dream of peace?" Mason smiled. "Every day." Scene change. Flashback in her mind. Her Zalari training as a child. She remembered the cold halls, the shouting, the punishments. Her teachers said feelings were poison. They said caring was death. But now, she felt everything. Warmth, silence, music, friendship. She didn't know if it was poison or if it was finally life. Scene change morning. An officer stops Mason. "Why are you wasting your time on her?" the officer asked. "She's still Zalari." Mason looked him in the eye. "No, she's becoming something else. She'll never be like us." "She doesn't have to be," Mason said. "She just has to feel." Scene change. Back in the cell, Sayla looking at the stars through the window. That night, she whispered to herself, "I was taught to be a weapon, but now I want to be a voice. I want to feel, even if it hurts." She touched the small music player Mason had left behind. The song played quietly, spoke of home, of love, of things she didn't understand. But she wanted to. Final scene, soft piano music. Camera zooms out slowly. Sayla sat by the window, plant in one hand, music in the air, stars above. And for the first time, she wasn't a prisoner. She wasn't a soldier. She was just alive. Sayla stood quietly, staring at the stars. Each one reminded her of home, of the Zalari Empire, of everything she left behind. But she wasn't sure if it was still home anymore. Scene. Mason enters with food. Mason walked in, holding a plate of food. "You're up early," he said. "Couldn't sleep," Sayla replied. "Bad dream." "No," she said. "I miss the silence of space." Mason sat beside her cell. "You're different now," he said softly. "You look more human." She laughed quietly. "That would insult my people. Then it means I'm doing something right." Sayla smiled, but her mind was somewhere else, because she had received a secret message the night before. Flashback. A tiny communicator hidden under her bed, blinking blue. Late at night, while everyone slept, Sayla had found the hidden device. It was a message from the Zalari High Command. Her people. They had found her. "Sayla, you are alive. Good. Your mission is not over." She listened carefully. "You must finish what you started. Kill the human. Escape. Return with information. The Empire needs you." She stared at the device for a long time. Kill Mason? Now? After everything? She closed the device and hid it again. Scene change. Outside the base, Sayla and Mason walking during her allowed hour. "Do you trust me?" Mason asked as they walked past the quiet buildings. Sayla paused. It was a hard question. "I don't know," she said. "Fair answer," he replied. They sat under a light post. Sayla looked at his face. Calm, kind, honest. He had never lied to her. He had never hurt her. He had never used her. Her own people couldn't say the same. Scene. Sayla in her cell that night, holding a knife. Mason had returned to her as a sign of trust. She looked at the blade. So many times she had used it without thinking. Now it felt heavy, like a choice. She could still complete her mission. She could still be loyal to the Zalari. She could kill him tonight. One strike, one breath, an escape. But something in her chest felt tight. It wasn't fear. It was sorrow. The kind that comes when you realize the truth is different than everything you were taught. Scene change. Mason returns with a gift. "I have something for you," he said, handing her a data pad. On the screen, pictures of Earth, forests, oceans, children laughing, people dancing. "This is what peace looks like," he said. She stared at the images in silence. "I want you to see it someday," Mason added. She turned her eyes away. Tears were close, but she didn't cry. Instead, she confessed. "I received a message last night." Mason looked serious. "From who?" "My people," she whispered. "They told me to kill you." Mason was quiet. His hand slowly reached for his weapon, but he didn't draw it. He just listened. "I didn't do it," she said. "I couldn't." "Why not?" "Because you made me feel something." "What?" "That I am more than a weapon." Scene change. Alarm sounds across the base. Red lights flash. An officer shouted, "We're under attack. Zalari ships inbound." Mason ran toward the command center. Sayla stood in her cell, frozen. "They're coming for me," she whispered. But this time she didn't feel like running. She didn't feel like hiding. She felt protective of this place, of the people, of him. Scene change. Command center. Mason gave orders. Soldiers prepared weapons. Then a voice came from the radio. "This is Zalari Command. Return the prisoner. Or die." Everyone looked at Mason. "What do we do?" an officer asked. He looked at Sayla, now standing behind him, unchained. "You tell me," Mason said. She stepped forward. "I'll talk to them." "No," Mason said. "They'll kill you." "They won't. Not yet." She opened the communicator. "This is Sayla. I am no longer your weapon. If you want me, you come face me yourself." Then she shut it off. Final scene. Outside the base. Sayla stands with Mason watching the dark sky. The Zalari would return soon. She knew that, but she wasn't afraid anymore. She had betrayed her blood, but found something greater, truth, and maybe even love. Final line. Sayla's voice over stars. I betrayed the ones who created me to protect the one who saved me. Sayla lay still on the bed. Her body was covered in bandages. Her side was burned from a plasma blast. She had jumped in front of Mason when the Zalari attacked. Not to protect the base, not to follow orders, but to save him. Flashback, blaster fire. Sayla pushes Mason out of the way, takes the hit, the memory replayed in Mason's head. Over and over. He sat beside her now, holding her hand, not speaking, just watching her breathe. Every breath she took reminded him what she had done. She saved him, and now he didn't know what he felt. Was it duty? Was it guilt? Or was it something deeper? Scene change. Later that night, Sayla opens her eyes slowly, light above her, beeping beside her, pain everywhere. But Mason's face was the first thing she saw. She smiled weakly. Still alive. He laughed softly. Thanks to you. You're welcome, she whispered. I owe you everything, he said. No, she said. You gave me something first. What? She looked into his eyes. A reason. Scene change. Several days later. She's walking again. Slowly. Sayla limped through the hallway. Soldiers moved aside. They didn't call her prisoner anymore. They called her Sayla. Some even nodded in respect. She was no longer the alien in chains. She was the warrior who saved a captain. Scene. Mason shows her a garden outside the base. This is our peace garden, he said. We plant something after every battle won. Sayla looked at the small flowers. Some were blooming. Some were dying. Like memories. Why do you do this? She asked. To remind us what we're fighting for, Mason said. Sayla kneeled slowly and touched the soil. I want to plant something, she said. Mason gave her a seed. She placed it in the ground gently, then looked up at him. Her voice was soft. I want to grow too. Scene that night. They sit beside a fire outside the base wall. The stars above were bright. The wind was cold, but the fire between them was warm. Can I ask you something? She said. Anything. If this war had never happened, would you still talk to me? Mason looked at her seriously. I don't know, he admitted, but I'm glad it did, because I met you. She smiled. I used to think humans were loud, emotional, foolish. And now, she leaned her head on his shoulder. Now I think I might be one of you. Scene, flashback. Sayla's childhood, harsh Zalari training. Voices from her past screamed in her mind. Emotion is weakness. Never love. Never trust a human. But now those voices were fading. Replaced by Mason's voice. Kind. Warm. Real. Scene change. Back in the base. Sayla talks with an officer. I want to stay, she said. You mean, with us? She nodded. I'm not going back to my people. They left me. Mason didn't. The officer looked surprised. You're saying, a human earned your loyalty? No, she said firmly. He earned my heart. Seen Mason and Sayla walking near the hangar bay. Alone. Mason looked at her. You could go anywhere now. Even Earth. They'd accept you. I don't want to go anywhere. Why? She took his hand. Because I already found the one place I want to be. He looked down at her hand in his. And for the first time since the war began, he felt peace. Final scene. Camera pans up to the stars as Sayla's voice plays. They trained me to fight. They trained me to hate. But no one trained me to love. And now that I've found it, I will never let it go. The stars above were quiet, but the ground below shook. Another Zalari ship had appeared. And this time they weren't asking for Sayla back. They were here to destroy. Scene, command room. Officers rushing in, Mason at center. We've got a Zalari battleship entering orbit, an officer shouted. Evacuate civilians, Mason ordered. Prepare defense cannons. Suddenly, a voice came through the speakers, deep and cold. This is Commander Varex. Return our traitor or you all die. Sayla stepped into the room, calm but serious. I know that voice, she said. He trained me. You mean? Mason asked. Yes, she said. He was my commander, my executioner, and now he's come to finish me. Seen soldiers prepare weapons. Mason turns to Sayla. You should go underground, he said. Hide until we win. Sayla looked him in the eyes. No, she replied. This is my fight too. You don't owe us this. I don't fight for Earth, she said, stepping forward. I fight for you. Seen outside the base. Smoke, heat, ships in the sky, fire in the distance. As the Zalari ships landed, Sayla stood in front of the human forces, no chains, no armor, just her will and her new heart. Flashback, training with Commander Varex. Harsh, brutal. She remembered his words. You are a weapon. You have no soul. You do not choose. But now, she had chosen. Seen Zalari troops charge the base. Humans fire back. Chaos. The battlefield turned into fire and metal. But Sayla didn't run. She led the charge. Faster than any human. Stronger than most. But fighting with them, not against. Mason watched her move like fire across the field. Every soldier who doubted her before now followed her. Seen inside the burning base walls, Commander Varex appears. He stepped through the flames, tall and deadly. Sayla, he growled, you shame your blood. I changed, she said, and I won't let you hurt them. You were made for war, not love, not weakness. She raised her blade. Then unmake me if you can. They fought blade against blade, fire around them. Fast, brutal, no words, only rage and history. But in the end, Sayla stood over him, his weapon at her feet. She didn't strike. Instead, she said, this is what makes me stronger than you, and walked away. Seen base after the battle, smoke clearing, wounded being helped. The humans had won, not because of stronger weapons, but because of one warrior who turned her back on war. Sayla stood beside Mason, covered in ash, blood, and sweat, but smiling. He looked at her like she wasn't just a soldier. She was the reason they were still alive. Seen officers gather in the meeting room. She led the fight. She turned the battle. She's not a prisoner anymore. The base commander stepped forward. Sayla, would you fight with us? Not as an alien, but as one of our own? She looked at Mason, then nodded. I already have. Final scene, campfire under the stars. Sayla and Mason alone. He handed her a small medal. What is this? It's what we give to heroes, he said. She looked at it, then him. I don't need medals, she said softly. I only need one thing. What's that? She took his hand. You. Sayla's voice. Over final starry sky visual. I passed their trials. I survived their blades. But the greatest fire was the one that melted my hate. The war was truly over. No more alarms. No more fire. No more fear. Just silence. And the beginning of peace. Scene. Sayla walks alone through the base. Soldiers nodding to her. Everywhere she went, people looked at her differently now. Not with fear. Not with hate. But with respect. Some even smiled. She was no longer the alien prisoner. She was their warrior. Their protector. Scene. Mason waits at the edge of the landing zone. A ship from Earth is arriving. Mason turned as Sayla approached. Your ship's here, he said. She looked at the sky. Earth, she whispered. I never thought I'd live to see it. You earned it, he said. She smiled, but something in her eyes was distant. Do you ever wonder who you are when the war ends? Mason nodded. That's when you find out. Scene. In front of the Earth ambassador and base officers. A formal meeting was held. Sayla, said the ambassador, you are no longer a threat. You've proven your loyalty. We wish to offer you full Earth citizenship, the commander added, and a new name if you choose. Sayla looked around the room. So many eyes, so much silence. And then she said quietly, but clearly, I don't want a name from Earth. Everyone looked surprised. She continued, I want one from the man who gave me life again. Mason stepped forward, eyes wide. You want me to name you? She nodded slowly. You gave me water when I begged. You gave me fire when I froze. You gave me a reason to keep breathing. Let my name come from you. Soft piano music begins. Mason took a step closer. He looked at her not as an alien, but as someone real, someone he cared about. He whispered the name, Lyra. She blinked. That's a star, she said. One of the brightest, he replied. Like you. She smiled fully this time. The name felt right, like it had always been hers. Scene days later. Lyra stands at the edge of the Earth transport ship. The wind blew softly. Mason stood beside her. You sure you want to leave the base? He asked. I want to see your world, she said. But only if you come with me. He took her hand. I'm not letting you go alone. Scene change, Earth, forest trail, children playing nearby. Lyra walked under the tall trees, birds singing above. Everything was alive, soft, beautiful. She turned to Mason. This is what I was missing, she whispered. He nodded. It's all yours now. Final scene, Lyra planting a flower in a garden full of earth and Zalari blooms. She dug her hands into the soil, planted her own flower, next to Mason's. On a small plaque nearby, 2 names were written. Captain Mason. Lyra, once warrior, now one of us. Lyra's voice over the stars. They made me a weapon. War gave me scars. But love gave me a name. And now, I am free.